as we know that the demand of international education in India is only growing as the aspirations of the middle class and upper middle class are growing very, very fast. We are also looking at India's vision as a country to become a global education destination. When you talk about healthcare, India needs about 15 million people in the next 12 years. When you talk about infrastructure, India needs about 35 million people. There are big things happening in this country, which is really going to shake up not just the world's economy, but also the way the emerging markets are engaging with the rest of the world, and people in those countries are living. And the quality standards are only going to go up.
So hi, I'm Saurabh, founder and CEO of University Living. We are a global student housing managed marketplace, and today it's early morning. Generally we do in the evenings, but today we have a guest which are early risers, and they are also early adopters, or I would say they are pioneers of international education. And rather than me talking, I would love to have them talking. So today we have Ashish, and Lawrence, who've been founder of Prospectus International. And rather than me doing talking, I would love to understand here from you. So Lawrence, or Professor Lawrence, at this age, would love to know about you and what you've been doing or cooking up in Prospectus International.
Sure, thank you very much, Saurabh. It's great to be here, nice and early. My background is as a political scientist, first in the UK and then in Australia. But for 15 years, I was in senior management in the UK and Australia as well, in universities, and particularly in international education. And I also have some Indian heritage, so I've always been fascinated in India. I've worked with my friend and colleague Ashish for over 10 years now, and he'll say a bit more about his background. But we decided a year ago that there was a massive opportunity here in India to help overseas universities and other higher education institutions to come to India and work with Indian organisations, but that the complexity of that was off-putting for many overseas institutions. So we founded Prospectus International very much with a view that we were going to simplify, and Ashish would have been much better phrase than me, but that we will simplify that engagement in order to facilitate the national education policy, but also the big opportunities that exist in India for higher education institutions and indeed for students.
Interesting. Ashish. So I know Ashish as a friend, but let him introduce himself, because I'm sure, he's very humble. Whatever he says, just double up, whatever he's saying. So Ashish,
Thanks,
more
Saurabh.
about you and why Prospectus.
Sure. Thanks, Saurabh. Good to be here. And of course, early morning here in Noida. My name is Ashish Sharma. I've spent about 20 odd years in few different sectors, including 11 odd years with the Australian Trade and Investment Commission. My last role with them, which I finished up in February this year, was head of education in South Asia. And over the years, I've learned quite a lot about education. Before education, I've done my MBA at Monash University. And before that, I was working in pharmaceutical sector here in India, where I was general manager for international business for a large pharma company. Very fortunate, when I was working with Australia, they sent me to Harvard Business School as well to do an executive leadership program. So you're talking about I don't brag. I kind of brag a little bit.
I would think the same.
And we have started this company, as Lawrence mentioned, that about a year ago, we were talking about what is the next big thing in India or wider South Asia region, and what can we do. And, the discussion was much more positive because I and Lawrence, we go back about 10 odd years. Lawrence used to be one of our clients, and, he has seen me growing in the market. And I've seen Lawrence taking up some, very big leadership roles and engaging quite affirmatively with India, looking at what's the macro trend in the market and where the opportunity is going to be. What we are trying to do in this company is to help Indian students to build fantastic careers, either in India or across the world. What we are doing for the foreign universities in the market or the institutions from other countries in the market is we are helping them to simplify India engagement in a much more sophisticated way. What I mean with that is from all the intel and networks and knowledge that we have and the associates who are working with us, nearly 20 odd people, pretty senior, could be 10 to 15 odd years elder to me. All of them who are working with us, they bring very solid experience on the table. And what we are trying to do is provide that experience to the foreign universities to develop newer market engagement models. As we know that the demand of international education in India is only growing as the aspirations of the middle class and upper middle class are growing very, very fast. We are also looking at India's vision as a country to become a global education destination. So what we are trying to do is really align those two things and provide the opportunity either outside India to the students or within the country if the students don't really find that opportunity or find it difficult to move outside India.
That's pretty simplifying a complicated way. Why Prospectus? How does this name pop up?
Yeah, well, we went through, I think, nearly 80 odd names. This was earlier this year in January. So we went through quite a number of names. The first thing which a student gets, a tangible thing a student gets in his or her hand is the prospectus of a university or institution where he or she is going to study. So that's from where the name came from. International is more because we are not specific to one country, although our market of engagement is very much India and we are looking at wider South Asia region for the spillover effect as well. But it's for universities from across the world to engage with India. So at the center of our thought process is India as a market. If you look at our logo as well, there's a very interesting story. We kind of went through a number of things to think about what our logo could be. And I remember Lawrence telling me, before we kind of got to Prospectus as a name, Lawrence telling me, can we create something like Shri Harikota Launchpad? We felt it's quite futuristic, but we need to stick to something which is quite basic as well. And when you look at the logo, it is an amalgamation of Goddess Saraswati, which we all know as Goddess of Education in this country, and Goddess Victoria, which in the Anglophone countries more of a goddess which provides you with success or victory. So when you look at our logo, you'll find kind of inspiration being taken from both the goddesses. And it also shows that it's an amalgamation of our thought process and our work to create opportunity for the Indian students in the education sector, whether it is in India or outside India. Lawrence, do you want to add?
No, I think that's a perfect summary of how we got to where we are.
Right.
So that's a Indian version. We'd love to have an Australian or a UK version because I believe you are from UK and then moved to Australia. Why don't you tell more about your background?
Correct. Okay, so I came to Australia from the UK to be the founding Dean of the Faculty of Business Government and Law at the University of Canberra. And from there was promoted to Pro-Vice Chancellor International. But I was very much part of the university's shift away from its focus on China to it still recruits a lot of students from China, but it wanted to engage in India, and I led very much that challenge, which is how I got to know Ashish so well. And we worked quite hard on building partnerships in India for the university and in developing a rich and deep understanding of what the policy direction was for India. And I really came into that role just as the national education policy was being promulgated and have been working alongside that, trying to understand it and its implications for overseas universities ever since. Which is why I think we're a perfect match, because I understand what goes on in overseas universities really well, why they get excited, why they also get very scared, and what needs to happen in those universities to allay their fears of engaging with a country like India. And Ashish understands in rich detail, how India works, and he has incredible contacts across India, particularly in the education space, but also in the industry space, which helps universities to engage. So between us, we're able to really build, as Ashish says, a sophisticated way of simplifying the complexities of working in India.
Do you read minds? I was thinking about asking you, what makes you different from other market entries? There are lots of market entries in India globally now. You answered a bit of it, but still, what makes your Prospectus different or more effective than other market entries? with all due respect to other market entries, and also your combination, which you already mentioned. And it seems that you both perfectionist?
Uh,
Is it?
Ashish definitely
Oh,
is.
come on.
I'm only a perfectionist some of the time.
So is it hard to work and come to a conclusion? Because see, you just starting off your entrepreneurial journey, of course, in this avatar, right? And I've been a entrepreneur for last 13 years, and I'm a first time entrepreneur. I mean, I got lucky that my first time I hit a jackpot. But coming from a founder background, when both the founders are perfectionists or so knowledgeable, at time, it's become a hindrance also. And because you're coming up with almost 55 years of experience, and now you again starting your journey, what keep you awake?
So,
After you.
all I was going to say is that I think what the two of us have in common, which is why we work so well together, is we start our Monday morning meetings with the same conversation every week, which is outcomes. What is it we're trying to get? So we worry less about what hasn't worked. We worry less about the why some people seem to want to go in a different direction of things, and we focus purely on what is the outcome we're trying to achieve here, and how do we go about it. So our conversation every week when we sit down for our Monday morning week planning meeting is, okay, what are the outcomes we're trying to get to generally, and what's the outcome this week that we want to try and get?
Yeah.
Ashish, I'll go to you.
Thanks, Lawrence. And thanks for the question. I don't think we are perfectionists at all. I think if that's the facade, I'm really sorry for that.
No, I'm just asking. This is the facade.
Yeah. But I think that between him and I, we have a very big comfort of working together, because we have done that as client and service provider in the past, and now more as co-founders as well, where we are talking about things with different kind of angles. What he knows about that particular opportunity or challenge at hand, and what I know about that's kind of a bit diverse. And where we do not try to pass the line is, if he knows something about, let's say, academia or maintaining the quality, where I have less focus or interest, or I would say not interest, but experience, I need not to kind of really move my point. And when it comes to working in India or really building those business models together, he respects me to kind of have a first go at it. But once we kind of do it separately, we discuss it together at the start, then we do it separately, and then we come together as well and talk about it. Something which kind of joins us in this journey is, one, having the comfort in knowing that the experience of the other person is very much valuable. So always putting that at the top. The second thing is knowing that we all have best interests at heart, whether it is for the students or the universities, which are our clients or institutions, and at large, the countries we are working in. And finally, I should not forget mention it, I wouldn't say that we are only pro-India. We are definitely pro-India, but we are having a very pragmatic view of the market. Whatsoever we are hearing from the market, we have our own sources to kind of verify that information. And what we are telling the clients is a very, very refined kind of narrative of what we might have heard over the last 1 to 2 odd years. And many of the times, the advice which we are providing, that is very, very unbiased. So we are happy to let go of an opportunity rather than providing something which is not going to stick around for longer. And I think that's where a bit of example from the relationship as well. Lawrence and I have been going for nearly 10 odd years now, in a different environment earlier, but we only formed this partnership because there is trust, and the trust in the experience and networks on both the sides as well.
So you asked about what makes us different from the other people that do these things, and we have deep respect for many of the companies that we know and we've connected with in the past. So this is not a criticism of them, but I think what we're trying to do is quite different, because we're not just matchmaking, we're not just planning a wedding. What we're trying to do is be with partners on a long journey, and that comes from, in some respects, bitter experience on my part of trying to engage previously with organisations and academic institutions in India and other countries where you spend a lot of time doing the matchmaking. Somebody spends a lot of time doing the matchmaking, or somebody actually plans the wedding. But then after the marriage, everybody disappears and nobody looks after the relationship. And what we want to be doing is not just we want to be there for the whole journey, from the moment that you're doing your spreadsheet around what you want your spouse to look like, right the way through to how many people you're going to have at your wedding, and then how many children you're going to have, and how that is going to play for the rest of your relationship. And that's really where we're going, is on that whole journey with organisations, and trying to help them with all aspects of that journey, so that it becomes, as Ashish says, simplifying complexity in a sophisticated way.
So more comprehensive, outcome driven, which you've been focusing on outcome, and because that comes from your ethics and your DNA. So you're focusing more on outcome, but not just one phase outcome. You're looking for comprehensive journey. And you mentioned about marriage, and I am again talking about another oxymoron, happily forever. But they are, in fact, I know your relationships, and you've been happily married and happily forever. So what you are saying, that you're just not trying to help them with matchmaking and arranging things, but you want to see through the relationship, and the outcome should be bigger, more consistent, and more sustainable.
And if I can add to that, some of the competitors which you have mentioned, without taking the names, we have deep respect for their work. They entered the market when the market was just kind of building up from scratch, and they did what was required at that point of time, and the capabilities which they had were from that early on. When we are entering the market, we are kind of, in this country, we are at the cusp of a very big transformation. And the analogy which I'll take from India is, back in 2016, India was 123rd in the world for data consumption. Now we are number one. And needless to mention that India built this digital infrastructure, and now everyone is talking about scale, whether you talk to the big businessmen or the big companies, or even the small and medium enterprises. So when we are entering the market, it also means that the market is going to disrupt quite a lot. So this is where we are providing a lot of experience and a lot of thought leadership in helping build those models. And I think as India is opening up, and I said that we are pro-India earlier, if we are doing something, let's say, for one of the client, and they kind of just have an oversight from us or a high-level understanding, and then they split the project of a long-term engagement in India, and they want few of the organizations to engage there, we are not going to kind of defend that too hard, because no matter whatsoever those other companies are doing, it is growing the value for the foreign institutions in India. It is growing the value of India's whole education ecosystem. And at the end of the day, what we are trying to do is providing more opportunities to the students, building more quality into India's education and research ecosystem, and making sure that whatsoever is delivered in the education sector in India aligns very well with the demand in the industry, whether it is latent demand or the future demand as well. So if we look at a whole context under which we all are operating, we actually are competing, but in a way we all are cooperating as well.
Yeah. In fact, interestingly, and it was not planned, in last probably 6 weeks, I've been hosting and interacting with few market entry players, and it wasn't planned that way. And I believe, firm believer that, all players are needed. So if you talk about university living, right? We got into this, we're a pioneer, right? I started university living back in 2015, and then I launched Unilodges back in 2011 when no one's talking about housing. Because due to my personal experience, I didn't get housing in UK. That's how I started Unilodges. And we launch Unilodges or we talk about student housing when no one was talking about, not in India, across the globe, And when we start early, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. And then when I moved out from Unilodges and started university living, I knew what I don't want to do. Not because Unilodges were doing it the wrong way, or probably because the time difference. If anyone who launched e-commerce or probably quick commerce, and if people don't have mobiles or they don't have internet, even the idea is great, it will not succeed. Similarly, previously there are 4 or 5 market entries which been around for a while, and they have created the environment and probably pitched that concept that okay, not only probably universities or or institutions don't need to have their big offices or permanent establishment in India, and probably we can do it, So coming from that background, and you already mentioned why you guys are different and why it will work for you. I'm sure it will work because the experience and most importantly the ethics, and also when you start off and you are focusing on a very niche sector with all those experience which that okay, probably if I would have been that place I would have not done this, So I'm very very sure that your idea, your plans will be super successful. If I ask something which is not pleasing, if may I,
Yeah, sure.
and we
Perfect.
can,
Yeah.
we talk about recruitment, we talk about international education, we all know the the great relationship between Indian education system and Australian education system, and kudos to you guys who've been working on this for ages, right? But off lately, if you talk about Anglophone countries, including Australia, UK, there's always on off of the policies, and you guys are so near to that, that academia or people who are taking this or deciding on these policies. Why we don't have a consistent policies around international education, around Indians, around Chinese, or probably without talking nationalities, but still, why we don't have consistency? Because if you see, I am worried about students at the end of the day, because we believe they are happy, we are happy, right? But if students at time feel okay, we want to study in Australia, we want to study in UK, but then there are some policies, due to geopolitical aspect, due to probably that stage of those countries and universities in these countries. So how you guys can be ensuring that policies are consistent, so that student can take decision more confidently, university can hire more confidently, and then place like us into housing, we can also plan more sustainable and a consistent way. Sorry, it's a long monologue, but I thought
No, it's an interesting one, and I think that we know that politics is always driven by, public policy is always driven by the politics of a particular country, and the short-term nature quite often of an election cycle. Australia is particularly short-term; it's only 3 years. In the UK, it's 5 years, generally speaking. In the US, it's 4 years. So we know that things such as migration and university funding and so on go in a cycle. I think part of our job is to look at the longer term public policy development. So if we look at what's happening at the moment in the world, there has been, in the big 4 destination countries, there has been substantial growth, particularly.
Can we name these?
Yeah. So Australia, UK, Canada, as 3 of the big 4, have seen unprecedented growth from a number of countries, not just from India. The US is still the biggest, but is a much more fragmented approach to international students. So it is interesting because it's the only one that hasn't done anything yet, apart from potentially seek to elect President Trump again, which may have an impact on migration policy. But what we see is growth, not challenge. What we have seen recently in the last year in 3 of those 4 countries, in Australia, Canada, and the UK, is attempts to limit that growth, not attempts to stop.
Right.
So I think part of the narrative that people have is that international education is dying. It's not. The growth has been phenomenal.
Yeah. And let me interrupt you here, and just to put some numbers, I mean, I've been interacting with lots of media, right? And if we understand that, yellow journalism sells, negative news sells, they are both sides of the industry. We have local domestic universities which want to convey that international student dying. Then we have international education partners which want to convey that, it's everything hunky-dory. But numbers are numbers, and just to drop some numbers. So still, 1.3 million students from India, almost 7 million international students, almost 35 million students in Anglophones are getting enrolled every year, and there are 80 million students across the globe who get enrolled for undergrad, postgrad, PhDs. Where is education dying? In fact, this is a beautiful amalgamation of local domestic and international domestic space, wherein, even I was reading something, there are 40 million students in India. We need 1500 universities in India, to cater them. That means everything can coexist, right? And that narrative needs to be more balanced than negative, wherein we say that, okay, Indian students are now not going abroad, and they are not getting jobs, or they are a housing crisis. Yes, everything is not perfect, but then if you see both the, whether it's TNE, whether it's local domestic education or international education, they all they should coexist. And as, I mean, if we don't have a good local education systems, we can't succeed in international education. So these are a few numbers and thought, but back to you.
Yeah, well, no, so I think my views are very consistent with yours, which is that we're seeing this growth is being checked. It's not, so it's the growth that's being checked, not the number of students. So there'll be less growth in the next few years. That creates opportunities for universities in terms of being able to become more selective and make sure that they're only taking genuine students. It also creates incentives for them to engage more with India and its national education policy, and to have much more active forms of TNE here. And I think what we'll see over the next 5 years or so is a shift in the ways in which universities work, so that there's no longer a binary decision between do you study domestically or do you go overseas, to being I may study some of my degree domestically, I may study some of it with a foreign university here in India, and then I may go overseas to do my postgraduate or another qualification or whatever. And that mixture, I think, will also then shape out in the way in which destination countries like Australia and the UK and other countries start to think of overseas students or international students coming to study, because skills demands that they have are not going to go away. We know that there's a massive shortage of workforce in these countries in particular skills areas, and countries like India have the capacity to meet those skills needs. So I think what will happen over the next 5 years or so is that international universities will come to India and set up. They will focus on those skills needs for their own countries. Students that take that opportunity will still have the opportunity to go and study and to work in those countries, but public policy settings will change, and that's an inevitability in my mind. Quite how that happens is a different matter, and part of our job as Prospectus International is to try and smooth the bumps in the road, so that the journey for both the universities and the students becomes simpler and easier to navigate, and we are able to provide the support that both parties need to be successful.
Absolutely, I can't agree more, and generally I don't agree too much. So I was giving that analogy, when we were having coffee, right? Wherein we've been told, everyone saying that, with Gift City coming in, and Ashish is an expert of Gift City, we talk about Gift City more. When we talk about TNE, transnational education, we've been hearing, and people are talking that, with TNE, with Gift City, more universities, coming, they're having their campus in India or in off countries, or or sourcing countries, international education or universities will hamper. Whereas my belief and strong belief is, and I give you an example, I still remember, I'm from Meerut, right? I used to come to Delhi for my undergrad. Every weekend used to go back to Meerut, and on weekend I used to take a bus from Indirapuram to South Delhi, and that bus used to cost me 10 rupees, and I'm like, it's too expensive, right? Then, when I started working, I started taking auto, which used to cost me around 150 rupees that point in time, and I'm like, it's too expensive, it's saving my time. Now, we only take Ubers or drivers, right? Not that, we can't take buses and, autos, but it's about saving time or utilizing your resources. So similarly, with TNEs and with universities coming in India and establishing their campuses, it would only accentuate, overall education, because people who have experienced quality education, they will crave and they will know that, okay, probably undergrad they will do in India, probably first year they have done in India, second year they go back towards sandwiches, courses and exchange programs. So I believe, and this is how it work should be, it used to be the same word. There's no borders. You can, wherever you get value, wherever you get best education, resources, you move, right? So eventually the word should be like that. It should be a borderless word. It's too idealistic, but and borders are blurred, right? Immigrations and policies need to be checked, but as noble thing as education, one should have access to best of education, and we have resources, we have finances, and with TNEs, in international universities, education, local domestic universities merging, signing MOUs. What a word we are looking for, and it will be amazing for students and all the stakeholders. But this is my view, and at time I get very opinionated. But back to the experts. Ashish, you've been talking about Pro India.
Yeah.
You've been talking about, you've been working on gift cities. So your view on this?
Sure. Before I kind of talk about that, I want to go back to your first question where you spoke about the policies in those countries and why there is a blip. I think we need to kind of approach this question with two different angles. One is the education angle, and the second is the migration angle. When you talk about migration, of course, these policies are going to impact the migration because every country needs people as per the demands which are existing for the next 15 to 20 odd years, and the same has started happening in India. When you look at education, I think that the future is very, very bright. The demand in India is growing. In 2014, there were 400,000 Indian students who were going outside India to study. Just before the pandemic, we hit about 870,000. After the pandemic, we again started from 350,000 per year, and now we are again tracking at somewhere around 750,000. So the demand in India is not going to stop at all. The middle class is growing, the aspirations are growing. But we need to kind of separate the institutions globally from our perception of the growth in the tech sector. The technology companies can grow very, very fast because we know that when technology is being integrated, the scale is very, very easy. But when you're really increasing those many number of buildings, those many number of housing units, those many number of teachers, the growth cannot really keep up with that demand. So I think we need to talk more about education and less about migration here. The second thing which we need to focus on is why does Indian students need to study outside India? And our goals at this point of time needs to be very different from what our goals as Indians were back in the 1980s. In the 1980s, India was a very different country. And now what I keep on hearing from our colleagues who are coming from across the world, including from Lawrence, every 5 years, this is a new country. And I know that we have our own challenges, and the social fabric is still building up, and still people are kind of working every day harder to make sure that they're providing a better future to themselves and their kids and further on as well. But the way Indian industry has really catapulted into the last 30 odd years, I think we are nearly at par with where the global companies are in those countries as well. The living standards still need to keep up. And I think in the next 50 to 20 odd years, as we are talking about India becoming a developed nation by 2047, the goal which our government has put in front of us and all of us have embraced, I think we will be there. But we will not be there if all of our people, the best brains, will keep on thinking how I can migrate to another country. You really need to talk about how I can access education outside India or within India. And the second, when I have studied there, do I want to work in another country to get the experience, or do I really want to start in India? And before I move to Gift City, the last thing, you spoke about taking a bus when you were a student. If I just look at my journey, back in 2005, when I did my bachelor's in India, my first salary per month was 4,100 rupees per month, right? From there to grow where I am today, it would not have been possible if India had not provided me with the opportunities.
Same.
Right?
Same.
Companies in this country are growing much, much faster than anywhere in the world. The type of value which we are creating is much bigger than anyone can fathom across the world except in China. The way we have tackled COVID, we have not only saved our people, inoculated 950 million people, which is a very big number, but we have also kind of provided those vaccinations to people across the world as well, which means that we have that technological prowess. We also have good manpower, and experienced people who can make this happen. So when we look at international education, look at the opportunities back in home as well. Both Saurabh and I have studied outside India, and
in India also.
And in India as well. So we chose to come back because opportunities are bigger here. Within my own household, my brother chose to stay back in Australia after his studies. He's doing exceedingly better there. But I don't really see anywhere where I'm lacking at all. You know, if I would compare myself to my brother about 10 odd years ago, I would feel that I'm miles apart. But now in many of the instances, he feels that I have much better opportunities here in home while living along with the family and making sure that we are making India shine again. Now coming to Gift City.
Before Gift City, you know, because that will be a different segment we talk about. You know, again coming back to you, and totally, you know, same. I did my undergrad from Delhi universities, best of universities, best of colleges. But I believe in India at that point in time, it's still, you know, the education is still a bit more theoretical. You know, it's still, you know, like now we are getting a national education policies and lots of things are changing. But you know, and if I would have not gone to UK and Nottingham, I would have not got my housing, I would have not set up University Living, right? But where I'm coming from, this is such a great time that you can study anywhere, everywhere. You have finances, you know, go for their year for 2, come back, explore India if you want to. Then you know whether you are better suited to stay outside or in India. But at least you will be able to take a more informed decision rather than previously that, okay, if you are going to US, you're sorted. But now I have so many friends who are coming back to India who have been doing so well in UK and in US. You know? So this is the perfect time, a very good time wherein you can take an informed decision. You know, now coming back to your point and talk about Gift City, because you've been talking about India, you've been talking about pro-India, you know, and we all know that the current government is very progressive. You know, there are lots of initiatives the current government have took all this while, and lots of initiative now is really booming up well. And one of those initiatives, Gift City.
Right.
So more of the Gift City, and then, you know, Lawrence, you can also add to it, because I'm sure you have you have lots of things which we are sitting on, and because of paucity of time, I need to rush few things. But back to Gift City.
Sure. So Gift City is you know, one of the very futuristic projects in India. What we have seen so far, that in the last 3 to 4 odd years, there are 70 plus international business units in Gift City. This is the first time ever in India we are talking about aircraft leasing and ship leasing. First time in India where we are looking at you know, big foreign banks establishing their capability centers in India. And Gift City also kind of brought together a value proposition for the students, where about 3 odd years ago, the Finance Minister of India announced in the budget speech that Gift City will also allow foreign universities to establish their base in Gift City, or the institutions as well. So what they really are doing is providing the opportunity for the foreign universities to come and train people, which Gift City as a whole can absorb. The companies there, which are in fintech or in IT or in STEM sector or in quantum computing, or the students who are trained there can then be absorbed by Indian or foreign multinationals in India. So that's a very, very futuristic step, I think. The way Gift City has provided the opportunity to the foreign universities, it is all through tax breaks for 10 odd years out of 15 odd years of operations in India, and having very, very certain policy metrics. And they have only one regulator through which the foreign universities can apply and come to you know, Gift City to establish as well. Gift City in many sense is kind of a bit different from rest of India as well, because it is a special economic zone. So in the most simple terms, you can think about an island existing in India, which has the regulations of its own, and they are free from many of the regulations in India. But still, when it comes to the movement of kind of finances between Gift City and rest of the world, one is outside the purview of FEMA Act in India as well. So I think that is just one very small opportunity through which Indian education ecosystem supported by government has shown that what can be done in India. And while the domestic Indian education system was kept out of it, the foreign brands can really operate in this market, because over the last 50 to 20 odd years, we have seen foreign universities operating campuses in Singapore, Malaysia, Dubai, Italy, South Africa, and a few other destinations as well. So why can't India attract those universities? And if we really roll back, I think 8 odd years, from where this idea was emanating is India thinking about moving into a space where it is attracting about 5% of globally mobile international students every year to India. At the moment, India only attracts 1%. So how are we going to make sure that India also becomes preferred study destination for the students who want to study outside their home country? And the second thing is, if India really has to grow that fast and really need to engage with the rest of the world, which we have started doing very well in the last 10, 15 odd years, we need to bring those people here. We need to bring the students who are going to be the future leaders. We also need to bring the talent here who are going to train students here in the market as well. And the last thing which connects with that is the opportunities in Gift City or corporate India as a whole are really too big. So we need not discount the opportunities in India while we are looking at accessing education outside India. The demand is going to only grow. But now is the time in India's history, I think the next 15 odd years, where India will provide opportunity to the foreign universities to come and set up the campuses here. And it is going to support us big way because it's going to bring in a healthy competition. And what you spoke about, having very didactic knowledge in the universities, that's going to change big time. What I learned when I was doing my MBA at Monash back in Australia was, I still remember the first comment made by our finance professor. He said, in the next 12 weeks, I'm not going to teach you how to crunch the numbers. I'm going to teach you how to control a CFO. And I think that's the leap we all need to have when we are studying. What we are studying, where is going to be the application, and is that skill or knowledge which we are going to attain going to be more helpful if we are sitting somewhere in Europe or in Australia or US or in India. And I think that the opportunities are quite a lot, no matter wherever you are looking. So I'm going back to the first point which I made, we really need to separate migration from education here. Because when you see it from education angle and how a student today can become a future leader in 15 years' time, that's where you start making those really good decisions. Otherwise, our thought process is going to be very, very limited and tilting more towards migration.
So you are saying India is having its own Dubai and Singapore within India, around India.
In Gift City, what they're trying to create is India having its own financial center. We already have a bullion exchange there. And what India really is trying to do with Gift City is making sure that we have our say in the global value chains and also in the global trade of commodities. We used to be one of the observers, at the international stage about 20, 30 odd years ago. And we shouldn't forget that India only came out of licensed Raj about 33 odd years ago. But within those 33 odd years, we had this exponential growth. And now we are not saying that we are going to sell something to other country or going to buy from other country. We are also going to control how those commodities move across the world. And that is what Gift City is going to do in the next 10 to 15 years.
So India will have so for those, media friends who want to pick, some ex-cups. So India will be soon having our own Dubai and Singapore within India. Now, we are in the last segment and we have Professor Lawrence, who's been expert for Australia, UK, and so many countries. And please, don't get upset with me if I talk about Australia cap policies, because if we don't talk that, it will be very limited discussion, and there are lots of, predictions and lots of expectations and all kind of murmurs going around, about Canada, Australia capping international students. But I believe there's more to it, and who else better than you, and I would love to hear from the horse mouth or one of the horse mouths about international caps in Australia.
So, we would be disingenuous if we didn't talk about the fact that Australia has introduced caps. What we do know is that it is a cap on growth. It's not, as I said previously, it's not about reducing international student numbers, it's about managing them in a sensible way. It is promoting a diversity of student source countries, and that's important regardless of which country you come from, because you don't want to go to study in a country and be surrounded by your fellow country people exclusively. You want to get that international experience. So
Right.
I think that the caps are driving some very positive outcomes for Australia. They are an annual cap, so that can go down or up, and I think most people expect it to be able to be lifted each year as universities respond to the government policies around doing the very things that university living are trying to do, which is ensuring that student accommodation is distinctive and not students are not taking, international students and domestic students are not taking accommodation that other people need. So what university living do, what other providers do, is ensuring that students get good quality student accommodation. The CAP policy in Australia is very much about promoting that. So caps, I think, are here to stay, but there's a cap on, I keep trying to remind people, it's a cap on growth. So it's reducing the scale, the exponential growth that was occurring in the international student market. It does mean that universities will be able to be more selective in the students that they take. I think for students from India and other countries, that is not a challenge, because if you're a genuine student, you will be very apparent that you're a genuine student. I also think that it will drive, as I said previously, universities to look at other activities in India, which will create a much more sophisticated and nuanced range of opportunities for students to maybe start their studies in India before they go to Australia to finish their studies, doing dual degrees and things like that as well. So I think it's creating the incentives to push together universities in a way that the NEP wanted to happen, and which now the Australian government, potentially inadvertently, I'm not sure it was a deliberate decision of theirs, but I think it will encourage the amalgam of Australian universities and Indian universities to work together to provide international education opportunities that are both local to India, but also provide that opportunity to travel overseas.
So what I've been getting from both of you is that, which I also firmly believe, that very good time for people who are serious about education. People want to migrate their other routes. There are migration consultants. There are lots of governments which are inviting, whether it's Portugal, Dubai, they've been inviting lots of talent through special talents, entrepreneur visas. So probably it's very important, and very, very important point you mentioned, that we need to talk about education separately from migration. And once we do it, if you want to migrate, there are different routes. Don't take migration route through education. It's been...
Well, they partly can, but one thing which the students are never being told is look at what those countries need in the next 15 years. No one really provides them this advice. And if I look back when I was thinking to study outside India, no one really spoke to me what the industry overview there is, how big the market is, how quickly the companies are growing, or what is the impact of the previous recession or the soft recession which we are talking at this point of time. But I think studying in a foreign university or institution needs to be a much bigger objective than just thinking about migration. Because if you're just thinking about migration, we all know that many of our countrymen in those countries, they put aside their qualifications and they start picking up the jobs which they are not meant for. So if you want those countries to value you and your experience, then you need to value yourself first. But don't start with the migration angle only in your mind. If you want to look at migration, look at where that country is going to go in the next 15 years. But if you start with the education mindset, that particular education will take you really global. And when you'll come back to your country, whether as a visitor or if you'll be coming back, you're not coming back with empty pockets. You'll have a lot of money in your pocket, and you're coming back with a lot of experience and network nearly across the world.
So
That's very important.
think global.
Yeah.
Think long term.
Yeah.
Take more informed decisions. And that's where stakeholders like Prospectus International, University Living, so many universities, education partners, are there. Wherein we are experts. We are here to give the right information, but you need to seek right information. You also need to differentiate wheat from the chaff. They are bad actors, but mostly people are good actors. They are in the ecosystem for 30 years, 20 years, 15 years, and they've been growing. So I'm a familiar of this space wherein I feel myself as a very, very blessed and fortunate chap, wherein we are amalgamation of education, real estate, and travel, and these are three roti kapda makan for Generation G, because they need to travel, they need to experience, and they need to educate. And to wrap it up, I believe for everything, education is a leapfrog opportunity for everyone, but you need to also focus on building skills, then just taking a shortcut and try to be quick rich or quick wealthy, because there is no concept like quick rich and quick wealthy. You need to work on your skills, and we have two really established folks around me who've been in the space for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years together, and a perfect validation, an example of cross-border education, cross-border experiences. So thank you so much. These 45 1-hour interactions are very tricky. I always believe that we should be sitting in 2 hours, talking, sipping our coffees, probably beers, and then loosen up and talk so many things. But probably it's a good start. And next time probably we'll be in our casuals on a Friday evening or a Saturday, and then we can talk lots of other things.
We'll look forward to this.
Thank you so much. Any last bit you both want to talk about?
First one.
I will just actually go to Malcolm Gladwell. You may be familiar with his books, which are very, very well written, but he talks about, you just made me think about 10,000 hours and how to be skillful at anything, 10,000 hours of practice.
Right.
And he talks about how the Beatles practiced in Hamburg for 10 hours a day, playing live music, and as a result became very experienced at playing their instruments. And I think that if you're going to be successful in anything, it's about that dedication to practicing what you do, to being good at what you do and investing in it. And that's what I would encourage any student to think about, is that it's not about a short-term route to getting migration. It's actually about a long-term plan about how you invest in what you do. I'm sure you've done that, Saurabh, in University Living as well.
Thank you so much. Ashish.
Well, two messages. One is for the students is to think big and think long. Nothing is going to come through in a year or two. What they need to look at is where their real interest is, what skills they can build from their education, and how they can apply it. If they can really match their passion with what they are going to do in their life, they will be really successful. And the success doesn't come from less work. So success always comes from a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
So that's for the students. And for the universities or institutions in India or across the world, what we are trying to do through our company is to bring foreign education to India and build those pathways where students are kind of saving their money, where they're looking at dual degree programs or pathway programs, or doing their full degree here and kind of graduating with a foreign degree in their hand as well. And if they are able to do that at considerably lower price, because the fee is going to be reduced, there are going to be no living costs because they'll be living in their own country or at their home, then they are still kind of getting the same value proposition. And on top of that, we are also aligning the industry perspective to whatsoever we are doing. So we are already thinking ahead, now we are kind of thinking about 2035, where the jobs are going to be, and are we really building the models now, which is going to graduate the students who are going to take up those jobs. India has, for example, started focusing in semiconductors. India really needs a lot of people in that particular space, about 300,000 engineers in the next 10 years. When you talk about healthcare, India needs about 15 million people in the next 12 years. When you talk about infrastructure, India needs about 35 million people. There are big things happening in this country, which is really going to shake up not just the world's economy, but also the way the emerging markets are engaging with the rest of the world and people in those countries are living. And the quality standards are only going to go up. And let's come together and provide the opportunities to these students so that they can take up the real issues 15 to 20 years down the line, rather than thinking about just migration.
Think long term, think global. And India needs around 10 million beds in India to make study in India successful.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.